And when you spend time like being miserable, like day in and day out, and like you're just dreading going to work, like you really need to step back and ask yourself, like, what's the point? You Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jasmine and this is Jazz Life. Today I am going to talk about why I quit my new residency program. And it's kind of hard to say it out loud, but a little bit of background. Anyways, a little bit of background. I started my new residency program late last year, like before the fall or like towards the fall. And I live in a small town where, I mean, it's one of the biggest hospitals closest to me. I didn't want to commute to Boston, so I was like, hey, like, it's a pretty good hospital. It has many branches, so I think it makes sense for me to start here. It's like less than 10 minutes away from where I live. And I thought it was going to be great. So in nursing school, a lot of professors and a lot of preceptors like push like the new grad residency programs. It's kind of like a good fit in the door because most hospitals don't hire new nurses without them going through their new grad program. So with that said, like if you did want to work at a hospital as a new grad, you either needed to have possibly done like your last year like internship or like synthesis at that hospital, or transitioned in from your new grad program. I was pretty excited to start working at the hospital. I interviewed, I got a position on an orthopedic unit, on an orthopedic trauma unit. Half of it was ortho, half of it was neuro, and I was pretty stoked. but unfortunately, it didn't turn out to be what I had hoped. So when I started working at the hospital, I was pretty excited. I did the day shift position. I believe it was like 7 a.m. till 3:30 p.m. And then it was also because I did, one of the requirements for the new grad program at the hospital is to do like the new grad like class. So you meet with all other people from different units who are also like part of the new grad program, new nurses. And you kind of just discuss what's going on. You learn new skills. You learn about the policy of the hospital. So basically it would be Monday to Thursday working, and then maybe possibly the weekends, and then Fridays would be the new grad class every Friday, and it ran for about like 4 to 5 hours. It was pretty interesting during the class because I mean it felt nice to kind of have like a cohort of like everyone is in the same boat as you. But for me personally, I didn't have any other new grad like on my unit in that specific group that I was in. So say there were about 24 people in the class, like no one else was on my unit, so like no one else could relate. So it was kind of interesting doing that. When I started at the hospital, I had one major preceptor, and she was really good. Like she was nice. She has like, I'd say like a type A personality, like very social. So she was able to make me feel comfortable and guide me through everything. And then I was supposed to transition to night shift because like that's what happens with all the new grads. Basically like everyone does night shift at a certain point, because a lot of the time they have night shift positions open and not necessarily day shift. So most of the time I had this preceptor, and then on one or two occasions, like when she wasn't in, I'd like have a different preceptor, and I'll tell you like a whole different story about that. But basically I cried a couple times because the substitute preceptor that I was supposed to work with when my main one wasn't in, she was just very mean. And she was black. And I'm just like, girl. Anyways, anyway, ugh, that's a different story. So basically, after doing the day shift for about 6 weeks, I transitioned to night shift. And the total time for orientation may differ per hospital, and then per unit, but most people finish the orientation period in about like 9 to 13 weeks, depending on, how far they're advancing and whether they're able to complete all the specific ta- tasks. I can't say that. And so we kind of have like a journal, or we kind of had a binder where each one it'd be like, okay, like, have you hung blood? Okay, have you done a wound change? Have you, I don't know, like hung an IV? Like all these skills that you needed to be able to do in order to kind of graduate from the orientation program into working on your own. So the new grad residency program, it's a 1 year commitment where you don't really get to change the unit that you're in until after the 1 year period. And there was some information about, it wasn't really clear, but it seemed like the 1 year orientation didn't count. You needed to do another year before you could kind of be like, I don't really like this unit, I want to change units. Because basically it's like that unit took you on to train you, so why would you just like move on to another unit? So when I transitioned to nines again, I was supposed to have like one preceptor, but I'd say like throughout my whole residency experience, which it was like 5 to 6 months, I had over 10 different preceptors, which is horrible because when you have like one person, they kind of know, okay, where you are at, what they're comfortable like letting you do. Whereas if you keep bouncing back from people, it's like you're starting like again every shift. It's like, oh, well, this person doesn't know that I'm comfortable doing this. Or usually my main preceptor will allow me to, take on these patients and do my own thing, while this one is kind of like on my neck. So, but you also don't want to be rude, because like you're new, and each person has also their own teaching style. So having over 10 different people, it kind of like made me upset, but at the same time I was trying to be very optimistic about the whole experience. I'm not the type of person that if someone is like wants to basically like nag and be like, well, I do it this way and it has to be done this way, and I know that, well, different people do it different way and it doesn't necessarily need to be done the way you do it. I'm not going to basically like argue with you. I'm just going to listen, learn, and take what I could take from what you're saying. Got to the point where like every shift I'll be dreading, oh, like who's going to precept me today? And it's hard because like when you go to the weekly like Friday class and you hear other people having such a great experience and how, yes, and like my preceptor and I are best friends and we do this and this and that, and like you don't have the same thing, and that basically you're just being bounced from one person to the other. It's hard, and no matter how optimistic you're trying to be, no matter how much you're trying to persevere and like be adaptable, it doesn't really help with the learning process. Basically, I remember one experience where I came in, I knew who was going to be my preceptor for the day. I go in like to look at, the patients that we have and basically look them up, and she goes, no, 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 no. Like, you're not staying with me today. Like, I can't precept you today. Can somebody else take her? And then it's kind of like, what? Like, okay. I mean, you precepted me at this point in my residency journey, and like at this point in my orientation, I'm pretty much like doing everything on my own. It's not like I'm a nursing student that you have to like show everything to. Like, I'm basically doing most of the job on my own. The only thing is that I'll come to you if I have any questions. And the way she reacted, like it very much threw me off. And so when she said, who else can take her? The person that took me on had finished their 1 year residency program, but they weren't someone who had spent like 5 years, or the person that was originally supposed to train me that day who said no, she had been there for over 10 years. So now I'm with like this person who like she has a better attitude and everything, but she's not my preceptor and like she's a new person again, you know. Um and in addition to being bounced back and forth, like usually if you're working 3 nights in a row, you know, well, I had these patients today, I'm possibly going to have the same patients like the next night. Maybe like 1 or 2 changes, but I know my assignment is going to stay the same, which is going to um give me a better workflow. And at the same time, it's good for patients to have some kind of like consistency when it comes to like who's taking care of them, you know. That way it's like each nurse like kind of knows like the patient's condition, you know, like, yep, I was with you yesterday, like what's new, let's like go over it, compared to I'm learning a whole different person, you know. I did bring it up to like the people that were facilitating the program, and there were like 3 different people, including my manager. And the funny thing is that the manager I had belonged to the other side of the unit. So basically my side of the unit didn't really have a manager. They were still in the process of trying to like find someone to cover the position, and the manager for the other half of the unit had basically taken on an extra unit, you know. So think about that, like the workload on him, it's not like it's not ideal, you know. And at the same time, like it does a lot to my nursing, like to my learning process, where when I come in and I say, wow, like I've been bouncing around a lot of preceptors recently. And then it's like, well, like, I mean, you're still getting a preceptor, right? And it's like, well, like this program is supposed to help me be the best I can be. Sorry, I'm just like recovering from a cold. This program is supposed to help me be the best nurse I can be. So if something is not being met, then like things need to be adjusted, basically. And basically when you like say your concerns and it's like, I mean, you're learning, like you seem all right, so like let's just like continue, and at least you're getting someone to precept you, and like that's basically like the bare minimum that you need, it's not really helpful, you know. Yeah, so basically, like I stated my concerns, I stated um like basically how I was being treated, and like nothing like was really done. um and then like finally I think I finished all my skills at like 9 weeks or 10 weeks, and they gave me an extra like couple of weeks to um like kind of like adjust still. But then at that point, like I'm basically doing everything on my own, and the preceptor is not doing anything. Like she's basically, oh, like is there anything you need, like checking in here and there. But yeah, there wasn't really much that I needed. Like most of the skills I had been able to do, and if I didn't, of course, like I would reach out and ask someone else for help. So during the orientation program, I went from having 2 patients to 3 patients to 4 patients. And when I transitioned to nines, we had up to 5 patients. Because like during the night shift, it's like people are sleeping, so the patient assignment is higher. And also we also have like a 3 to 11 mix in between the night shift. So basically when the people that work 3 to 11 left, they will give you like a patient or 2. So the first couple weeks that I worked the night shift on my own, like orientation is over, I'm still in the new grad residency program, but like I don't need to have a preceptor. They gave me 4 patients, and oh, this is lit, this is nice. I'm being able, like I feel comfortable, you know, taking care of these patients. I'm adjusting, I'm learning, figuring out like my flow and my schedule. Then after those like 2 weeks transition periods, I ended up having like now I'm getting 5 patients, 6 patients. And this night that I recall, I was taking care of 5 patients. At 11, I get a 6th patient. Like I get a report of one that I know I was expecting. And then someone just comes again and it's like, yeah, like you're getting my patient in say like room 4A, right? And then I'm like, oh wait, I just got a report for another patient. So then they tell me, well, it's on the chart that you're getting like this one too. Speak to the charge, like if you have any questions. And so then I'm like, yeah, definitely. Like, it's not like I've been working independently for a month. Yeah, I'm gonna ask the charge, like, how can I be getting 7 patients in one night? So I go to the charge nurse and I'm like, hey, like I already got a 6th patient, but I'm getting a 7th one. What's going on? And she goes, yeah, basically like we are short, so like everyone is having more patients than usual. So yeah, you get 7. And at that point I'm like, okay. Because, you know, like mentally, like when you come in, you plan your day around the number that you have. Plus, like the max for nights was supposed to be, I think, 6. So for you to just throw 7, and I'm still in like the new grad residency program, I was just like, okay. And so that night ended up being like terrible. I was basically like stressed, and I feel like a lot of bedside nursing is just like accomplishing task after task after task, and it doesn't even allow you to like properly like look into people's charts and like know everything about them, you know, because once the 3 to 11 person leaves and now it's 7 a.m. and you're given report, and the person that is getting report from you is looking at you like you don't know your patient, and then it's like, well, I had 7 patients and like this one is the one that I picked up, so this and that is what I know, and like you're gonna have to look it up yourself because I'm not gonna know A, B, C, D all the way to Z about this person that I just got, you know. I feel like in hindsight though, a lot of the times when I was kind of like passive about situations and like dealing with it on my own, not really like voicing out that, well, I don't like this, or like, well, I'm not comfortable with this, and just like trying to be like a go-getter and like just get the stuff done, but at the cost of my own mental health. I could have been more like vocal about, okay, well, I'm not really comfortable getting the 7. But then at the same time, it feels like you can't be vocal because it's expected of you, you know? Like, it's expected of you, and if you're not able to get your job done, then it's like, what are you doing? You know? However, like, I really wonder, I should have checked, like, if the charge nurse was given everyone like this number of patients, like could she have possibly taken some on her own, you know? Because it's like it's the nighttime, it's not like it's day shift, you know. You could possibly like take 1 or 2 to help. I don't know if she had any herself. Yeah, so initially when I was working during the day shift, I was working like up to 40-hour weeks, 40-hour work weeks. And then when I switched over to working nights, I was like a 24 flex position where you could pick up shifts. I didn't really pick up no shifts. I felt like at the end of the 2 days, which usually like I blocked my shifts into back-to-back days, I was so exhausted and my circadian rhythm was so off that I would spend the next couple of days recovering. And then it wasn't really healthy for me, you know, because I think I'm usually like a day person. Back in college, I was waking up at 5 a.m. You know, like I'm a day person, I'm a morning person. However, the reason why I chose the nights was because, well, that was what was offered to me initially. Later on, during my residency, my manager did tell me that a day position opened up, but at that time, it just felt like, well, I've gotten so comfortable doing night shifts, and the night shifts seem like a slower pace. So definitely, I feel like I'm learning more, and I'm able to sit back and like read the chart. Whereas like when I had my day shift experience, it was like, well, family was in, and then PT and everyone was in, and it just felt so like hectic and busy. And I felt like for my learning process, like the night shift would have been better. But then for my mental health, like it wasn't doing any good. Just started to get like very wary of the unit that I was in, and every time, you know, I was off a couple of days and I'm going back, it's just the amount of anxiety that like overcame my body. It was just depressing. It felt like I'd go to bed and now I'm having nightmares about like like stuff going wrong and like me running around in a unit and like trying to fix everything. um and then the days when I'd actually go in and like I'd come back to sleep like the morning off, I couldn't really get any quality sleep, and I'd wake up feeling exhausted and like I barely slept, you know. So the unit that I worked on, it's a very heavy unit because it's ortho. Like a lot of people like need help, like lots of lifting, and sometimes just like the nurse to patient ratio, like the amount of CNAs or PCAs, it's not enough. So you find yourself like doing a lot of the things alone, which it's not preferred. But at the same time, when you're running on a time crunch and you're trying to get all these tasks accomplished, it's like, okay, let me just put the bed in Trendelenburg and like lift the patient by myself, you know, because I'm waiting for the last 10 minutes and no one is coming to help me. And like there'll be times where the unit secretary would tell me, oh, like, Jazz, like, can you go help your patient in room whatever, because the PCA is helping, is busy or occupied. So then you have to kind of like drop all your tasks to go help that person. And then when you're in there, they call you again, hey, like your new admission is here. And it's like, I'm only one person. Like, how am I supposed to be splitting myself into so many people because the help is not available, you know? But times where like it's a slower night and like everyone is being helpful and everyone is being hands-on, but those nights were like few and far between. There were more nights where like everyone is frustrated, everyone is stressed out, everyone is talking about how like they're not gonna come back the next day, they're gonna call out, you know, and the energy is just like really low and like negative. So I'd say like the workload, the lack of like staff, or like the ratios, um and just like overall like how you get treated by others, like it just does a lot, from your co-workers to the patients. Like, you know, there were some patients that were very, very notorious for pressing that call button, and it just drains so much out of you, because I just feel like sometimes you don't realize that, honey, like you're not the only one here. And if I'm here with you and I'm asking you, okay, like, is there anything else you need? And you tell me, no, you're all set. And when I leave the room, you want to just call me right back when you're in isolation room, so I need to gun up and everything. But I was just there a minute ago and you told me you didn't need anything, you know? And I think with some of those patients, it was just because, like, you know, they just needed someone to be there. They just needed someone to be present. But I guess they didn't understand that, like, as the nurse, like, you had other patients and, like, you had other tasks, and you couldn't just sit in the room all day with that patient because you had other things to do. And definitely, like, when I came to work, I always like did everything I could to help my patients. I did everything I could to help my coworkers. Most of the nurses would sit like at the nurses station, like in the night, you know, like it's when it's a less busy night. Everyone is just chilling and vibing and talking about their personal lives. But I was definitely like not that person. Not that there's anything wrong with doing that, but I would always like sit like in the hallways, so that I'm closest to my patients in case anyone like rings the call light, like I'm right there. However, like I find myself, you know, doing everybody else's job because like I'm the closest person there. So even if it's not my patient and the call light is on, like I'm gonna go in there and ask like if they need something, you know. Whereas like other people are just like laying low and relaxing because it's like, oh yeah, she went in there for me, you know. And that's the thing, like the more you try to sacrifice for others, the more you try to like overexert yourself and just do everything you can, the more drained you get, you know. The more you're putting your mental health at jeopardy till it gets to the breaking point, and it's like you just can't do it anymore. And that's what happened to me. I got to the point where it was just so dreadful. I figured that like if I continue this way, I'm just gonna hate nursing in general, you know. I'm just gonna want to do something else. And I haven't even like spent a year as a nurse and I want to quit already. And when you spend time like being miserable, like day in and day out, and like you're just dreading going to work, like you really need to step back and ask yourself, like, what's the point? You know, because no amount of status, no amount of money is really worth your mental health. You know, it's really worth jeopardizing your mental health over, you know, because like as a nurse, like you're supposed to be in the best like mental state to be able to care for others. And how can you even provide quality care for others when you can't even care for yourself? And I think most nurses, we all like sign up for this job because like we have that intrinsic desire to help others. But that doesn't also mean that like you have to be a vessel of abuse. Like you shouldn't be insulted, you shouldn't be bullied, you shouldn't be physically, verbally assaulted at work. That is just not okay, you know. And so when I see people who, you know, they've worked on that unit for 20 years, 30 years, and I just wonder and I'm in awe, like, how do they do it? I guess like we are not all cut from the same cloth because I can't. I couldn't. I can't. And that's okay. Like, I don't need to be this strong person who is able to take everything on and like this like strong black woman narrative. But like, that's just not me. You know, like I'm not okay with being assaulted. I'm not okay with being verbally abused. I'm not okay with being spoken down to. Like, that's just, I'm not gonna do it. And when you find yourself in the position where like your work life is definitely like affecting your social life and like how you treat your loved ones, it's a problem because like you're coming home with all this anger, with all this negative energy, and you're spewing it onto others who haven't even done anything to you, you know. You just know that like that's not for you and like that's not the best you can be. And when I decided to leave that job, I just felt like an overwhelming sense of peace. I felt an overwhelming sense of freedom. And when I used to feel suffocated, I didn't feel as suffocated anymore, even though definitely there were thoughts of like self-doubt and like self-worth and like self-esteem, because it's like, well, is it because like you're unable to do it, like you're not smart enough or you're not strong enough? But like none of those are true, you know. It's just, if something is not good for you, it is just not good for you. And it doesn't mean that you're not smart, it doesn't mean that you can't do the job, it doesn't mean that you are not capable. It just means that that environment is not helping you be the best you can be. And you don't have to put yourself in a negative environment, you know. You don't have to struggle in order to feel like you've been successful, you know. We are not here to struggle. We are here to live a soft life. We are not here to struggle. Like, we are here to live a soft life. Like, life is short. And you need to remember that there will always be another job, but there will never be another you, you know. And so many nurses have committed suicide over the things that happen, the things that build up and pile up every day at work. You know, you're kind of like an emotional sponge, you know, absorbing all the negative energy, absorbing all the sad emotions, you know. And there's not always like enough positive experiences to counter those negative experiences. So I left the job. I took a month off, like, you know, switching from positions. I didn't leave it ideally in a way where like people already have their next job lined up. Like I had a break in between where I was searching. And now I got a job where I'm working the same number of hours, but I got a $10 raise. And I don't have to suffer all the abuse and neglect. I really don't. So it is what it is. Anyway, thank you for listening to my story and my new grad experience. If you have any questions, like leave it in the comments. If you have any other stories like you want me to tell about my time doing bedside nursing, you can leave it in the comments and then I'll get back to you in another video or re-comment. Thank you. Oh, also, if you like this narrative story story time experience, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like this video. Bye.